Hi everyone, welcome back to Los Angeles B. This is the 4:30 talk. First, a word from our sponsors for Los Angeles B. This room is sponsored by Max CDN. Max CDN is a next-generation content delivery network based in Los Angeles. The whole team is obsessed with speed, automation, real-time reports, and implementation. So if you want to put some of your own bandwidth through their CDN, go ahead and head over to maxcdn.com for a free trial. This talk is Robyn Bergeron, Devops and open source equals BFF practices. On the back of your badges, you'll also see a link to fill out a survey for our speakers. When you're done at the end of the day, please take a look at that. Thanks.
The more stars I get, the more beers everybody gets? Is that how that works? No? No. Okay. No benefit for us. All right. Speakers are really that. Yay! All right. Hi, guys. My name's Robyn. I'm going to do a little bit of about me. Normally I try to refrain from, the 10-minute about me, but I'm going to embellish on that just like a little bit. I may go to like 2 or 3 minutes, but it's sort of background as to why the rest of this stuff is important to me. So, also, I really kind of make terrible, awful, no good titles for talks. This is definitely one of them. Yeah. It's actually maybe the worst one ever, except for the year that Amber Grainer and I gave a talk together at this conference. And if you're very enterprising, I'm sure you can find that using Google, but I won't say that in public right now. So have fun with that. So this is me. This was a long time ago. This was the 90s. You'll notice by the Windows NT screens, and how young I was. Also, I started as a sysadmin at Motorola Computer Group in like 96, 97, and left just after Y2K rolled over because that was incredibly wise of me. And I had some other jobs after that. I worked at Intel. I was a business analyst. I forecasted chips. That was actually cool. I went home and had kids for 7 years, which was the greatest thing on earth. I still have them. It's my other full-time job, just to be clear. More recently, my last job was as the Fedora project leader. So hopefully you all know what Fedora is. Yay! And I'm not in charge anymore. That guy is. His name's Matt Miller, and he's awesome. Yay! But now I work at Elasticsearch, which is also awesome. Yes, my enlightened years. Yay! And my title there is, well, it was developer advocate. So my boss is Leslie Hawthorne. She keynoted here last year. Maybe some of you guys know her. Maybe not. You should, though. Just meet her sometime because she's awesome. And I said, this whole developer advocate thing is sort of weird for me because I'm not really a developer. I've always been sort of an operations person. I was a sysadmin. I worked on an operating system and not really, other stuff. So maybe I should be an operations advocate. So that's my new title. We haven't told the CTO this yet. So hi, Shai, if you're watching this. It's my new title. But I guess, the thing here is that the ops advocate stuff sort of reflects, I think, where my heart has been, all along, and the stuff that I really care about. Not that I don't care about developers. I live with one, so, there's that. But, my heart's always been sort of in the operations stuff along with, open source in general. So, yeah, the subject is pretty near and dear to my heart. And I say that, in a very truthful way because I know I'm being sort of, light and happy and slightly nervous. So I actually really, truly, legitimately care about, open source communities. I've slaved and given my soul to the point of utter exhaustion and crying, and I would do it over and over every day. If someone asked me again, I would do it in a heartbeat because it matters to me, and I believe in the power of open source communities. I think they can do great and awesome and amazing things. When people work together, very cool stuff happens. I also believe in the power of DevOps. We can talk a little later about what a convoluted word that is, but I really do think organizations can adopt habits and practices and continuously improve, their day-to-day lives, their day-to-day, how they're deploying things, how they're just getting out of their technical debt, making themselves generally be happier people. I don't think that you should have to be special. I don't think you should have to be a unicorn or a startup or have, less than 10 employees for this stuff to be actually possible, because anyone should really be able to take small steps and make their world a better place. I don't think you have to use complicated tools. In fact, I think the simpler they are, the easier it is for, people to start to come together. So, that said, what you should get out of this talk. This kind of stuff is important to me because if you see this and you don't care about any of this, you should use the law of 2 feet and find something else that's more interesting. I will not be heartbroken because it's somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour of your life, depending on how fast or slow I get through these slides. So, number one, I know some people are sort of like, what the heck is DevOps? Some people are like, oh my God, she's going to totally butcher it because I'm an authority. There's probably a huge range of that in here, but you know, maybe you'll find something out that's different about DevOps, and that'll be great. Knowing about communities of practice, which is a term that fewer people know about, and you will learn some of that today. And some of the habits of successful DevOps practicing organizations, and also of successful open source software communities. And if I'm lucky, you might think some of this is so amazing that you're going to go home and talk to your boss, and he's going to be blown away, or she is going to be blown away, and be like, yes, whatever you want to do, that sounds great. Because, yeah, this sign is a total lie, right? Because it is. Back when I was, you know, the sysadmin picture, when I was like, yay, the world is so great, that was the 90s. And back then, you know, open source, if people had heard of it, if, those were like dirty, scary hippies that ate lots of pizza, have never seen the sunshine, right? And like, it was a trick, right? We're giving away free software, like what they're putting backdoors in it and giving it away to us, like, you know, we're not that dumb. And like, what about the certifications? Like, how do I get, where's my license? Where's my shiny holographic sticker? Like, these guys just can't be legit, right? We told our boss we'd really like to use this Red Hat Linux stuff to really date how long ago that was. And he looked at, you know, Bob Oxendale looked at us like we were completely crazy. Like, what? And it was mostly not about like, will it work? Because he knew it would sort of work. It was just like, my boss and my boss's boss and my boss's boss's boss are all going to, you know, come around and strangle me, because that's just not, you know, how we do stuff in IT. So that's basically how that went for everyone, probably into the 2000s. Open source was sort of sad and misunderstood, and people threw the word about. But, you know, we know that things eventually got better, right? Right. Because now we're here, right? And open source is pretty much okay, right? You know, it's cool to use open source. Everybody and their mother has a GitHub account. There's like, you know, 10 billion of them. There's like 2 for every person on the planet. Companies give away their code. They have their own organizational GitHub accounts, and they're not even like software providers. They're like Walmart, you know, things like that. It's more of a norm. It's not like some crazy thing that only dirty hippies do, although they can do it too. We can all do it because it's okay to do open source, right? But it didn't happen overnight. It's taken like 15, 20 years for that to actually happen. But there wasn't one day where it was like, it's not okay. And then the sun came up, and then instead of the birds pooping on everything, they started chirping again, like, yay, open source is now the thing. It's been like, you know, people like us who go to conferences and we pound the pavement, people like the wonderful people who put on Scale every year. This is what? 13x, I believe that means 13 years of doing this for people in software communities that want to get together and learn more about the world and learn things. And, you know, that everywhere multiplied across the world has gotten us to where we are today. This, however, this is DevOps right now. If I had written this slide deck more than a couple hours ago, not that I did that at all, I've been working on this in my head for some time, I would have brought my own chair so that I could, like, lay in it and be like, DevOps thing is easy. But that, like, the open source picture would sort of be a lie. I'm going to pause right here in the middle of the unicorns because I started talking about DevOps, and I promised in the beginning that we'd, you know, you might get a slightly better definition or get a clue about it or be mortified by what I say. I give you my little definition, and I, you know, have crafted this from whatever. There's places on the internet. It's basically how I feel. The practice of operations folks and development folks working together to continuously improve the quality of their products and improve the feedback loops that lead to those improvements. Yay! Most people just think, like, okay, well, who's actually doing it, and how can I relate that to my life? Number one person who's always mentioned is, like, Netflix or Etsy. Etsy, I think it's harder to see unless you're really into digging into those details, but you think about Netflix and, like, you know, House of Cards Season 3 is coming out, like, imminently, or may have accidentally come out for, like, 3 seconds last week, and then they rolled it back immediately. And anybody else, if they accidentally put something out and needed to roll it back immediately, they probably would have taken, like, 4 days to actually do that, and Netflix did it in the space of 3 minutes. There are people who are usually on the bleeding edge. Mostly what they're trying to do is shorten the cycle between the time that someone has an idea and the time that it actually gets delivered. Because in a lot of places, like, I have an idea, that sounds great, let's go do it. 6 months later, yay, we're done, and then they put it out there and they're like, oh my god, this is, like, completely irrelevant already, right? So anytime you can shorten how long those cycles take, the more like it is it's what you're making is going to be relevant by the end, or at least that, you know, if things start twisting and turning, you can keep up with those turns in, you know, how the world works. Anyway, watching the Netflixes and the Etsys and Flickrs and, you know, all the Amazons and whatever is pretty cool to all of us, but again, we sort of go, yeah, right, they're special unicorns. But, you know, when I think about it, like, this perception is sort of similar in some ways to, you know, how the perception was of open source 20 years ago, and that it was, like, completely misunderstood by most people, right? Some people actually saw the little bit of value that was there and could see, like, the great potential future, and most other people just were like, hey, this is a cool buzzword, and you know, when your boss comes to you and says this, can I get this? Because this doesn't exist. You know, DevOps is way more about culture, way less about tools. You know, boxing up culture is kind of hard. Sometimes finding practices that you can share amongst other people that you know, but inside your organization, with your peers in, like, parallel organizations to you, that's a little less difficult. DevOps is really awesome. It's had lots of great results for, like, actual people who aren't necessarily unicorns, but are, you know, trying to adopt some of those practices, which is exactly why people are jumping on it. Like, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread or since the dawn of open source software. So yeah, if you work in IT, if you haven't heard this yet from someone, you're going to. And it might be your boss, it might be the person in finance who heard that, like, we need to have this so that everything will be great. And then, you know, the triple face palm picture, which I didn't work into this, and I really should have. So you guys are all here. It's Saturday. You're not at home watching sports ball. You're not at dinner. You're not having a cocktail. I might be doing that afterwards. You're not playing mini golf. It's beautiful outside, like the sun is shining, it's great. But, you know, by the virtue of the fact that you're, like, here listening to me and other probably way better people talk, you're participating in open source in some way. Like, you're consuming, you're sharing, you're listening, you're taking these notes home and, you know, sharing them with your colleagues, whatever it is. And because of that, you're probably familiarized with lots and lots of open source practices, even if you don't really realize it and you go, what, there's practices, how would I know what those are? Well, they exist, trust me, and we'll get to them, but it's more of like an intuitive thing. But once you actually see them sort of called out, it becomes a little bit more clear to you, I guess. And then you're going to share it with others, and then the world will, kumbaya, live in harmony. So, science, right. Who here has heard of a community of practice? All right, so that's a handful of people. Half of them are Red Hat employees. That's sort of scary. Okay, so this is the definition of a community of practice. A group of people who share a concern or passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. And this is actually from a book called Communities of Practice, written by Etienne Wegener, whose name I will perpetually screw up in public. So if you think about that in sort of the context of open source and DevOps, right, it's sort of easy to see how people who share a concern or passion for something, it could be like a community, right, or a fan club, or whatever. But communities of practice actually do things, and then they figure out how to do those things better over time, right? It's not just about the software, it's about how we're actually making the software, or how we're making the campfire when we're done, because we're awesome. So like, in terms of open source, lot of times people just think of open source as it's this free software that I can just go and get and download, And that's it. That's like the end of their relationship, or that's the end of the project's relationship with people, because they're not actually interested in, having people participate. They're just throwing it out there. And that's fine, because the world is better for one extra, JavaScript snippet on the internet, right? I guess. But, lots of times it's, people throw it over the fence, they dump it into GitHub, that's it. That's the end. It's open source software. Open source communities are a little bit different, because they're actually they're taking patches and all the things that we sort of know about, but a lot of times they're actually looking at how well they're doing those things and making sure that, gosh, we didn't do so well last time we did a release. What were the problems that we had? Like, maybe we should start doing continuous integration. Maybe we should, talk to each other more often, or have more meetings, or have less meetings, because, God, all the meetings are preventing us from getting actual stuff done. But it's improving the craft of making the software, not necessarily the software itself, but in improving your craft, inevitably your software gets better. DevOps is sort of the same thing, right? Lots of people say, like, DevOps is just tools, and other people go like, no, it is not just tools, and, big wars will break out. And I'm sort of on the it's not tools side of the fence, but nevertheless, that's just what some people think, and that is what every company is pitching it as right now. Like, if you buy this, you will be doing the DevOps thing day and night, 24/7. Or you can be like a practitioner of DevOps, right? And those people who are continuously improving their product and their methodologies inside their organizations. And, if you look at events like DevOps Days, right? That's where people who are doing those things are coming together and talking about what they are doing in their organizations and sharing that amongst themselves, and then taking those things back inside their mini organizations, in their mini communities of practice at work, and, back and forth, back and forth. So, yeah, basically, they are both groups of people continuously improving things, which is awesome, and with the hopefully the end goal of delivering better stuff to whoever is consuming it on the other end. And in addition to that, continuously improving and sharing inside and outside their immediate community space, whether that's their office mates, their coworkers, their open source community that they're in, whatever it is, their practices and their behaviors. What's working out for you, what's not working out for you, etc. And honestly, DevOps and open source really aren't all that different at all. Lots of people who do DevOps, I'm saying that with a finger down my throat, but saying DevOps practices over and over just makes you want to strangle yourself. Anyway, people who are practitioners of DevOps are more often than not using open source tools, right? Because they know where it's coming from, they know what's going on, they can participate in them and make sure that whatever they're doing is actually going to be aligning with the future of that project. All sorts of amazing benefits. And people who are in open source projects are figuring out, wow, these DevOps people aren't all that crazy. Continuous integration? Wow, imagine if we did that in our software project, all of the amazing benefits we would reap. Which was one of the things that I fought for in Fedora for, the entirety of my stay there. So, yeah. Anyways, those two communities of practice have people who often participate in the other community of practice, right? They're both communities of practice. They both have, similar habits, right? Because that's where I'm going next. Who here has heard things like openness and transparency as a, sort of open sourcey thing? Knowing what's going on inside your organization, inside a software project, is really sort of key to anyone who wants to make an improvement. If you want to do something new or different, if you don't have a view of what the bigger picture is, whatever it is that you're doing may not fit into that bigger picture. If you're not telling people what you're working on, they won't know that you're actually doing stuff. And not having that communication can sort of radically affect the results. And it's very much, it's very similar with people who are doing stuff in DevOps, except that it's oftentimes people inside your business organization that, want to have a bit more transparency into what you're doing, or the devs want to see what the ops are doing, the ops want to see what the devs are doing, the security guys want to see what everybody is working on, and, so on and so forth. We won't even talk about the NSA. That would be sad. I got the greatest sticker. Can I just pause? Yeah, I got this National Security Agency monitored device sticker at FOSDEM, and I think it is my favorite thing ever. Anyway, release early, release often. This is something that I've heard 1,000 times in various open source projects. And the essence of this is basically we want to get the code out there as soon as possible in the smallest chunks that we can get it out there, right? Because it's sort of in the interest of being transparent, and that, Daddy Shadow Man, like at Red Hat, is not, keeping his giant tentacles in everything. Like, we're just showing what is going on because Daddy Shadow Man would never do such a thing, right, Ian? Right, never. Also, so that others who are writing code aren't necessarily deviating too far away from what you're working on, right? If you're like, I'm just going to patch this real quick for the next, 6 months, and, by the way, I'm going to also, write a new desktop while I'm here and a new file system, and then you come back and you're like, oh, here it is, and everybody else is like, well, we were just doing the thing we were doing before, but it's a little different, so this isn't really going to jive together. Like, the dude who went off for 6 months probably should have been doing a little bit more release early, release often, so that people could be in communication about what was actually being developed. And also so that people in the community could say, dude, we do not need another desktop. What are you doing? Like, there are enough. And, sort of course correct a person who may be very excited or overzealous or whatever. In DevOps land, people talk a lot about things like continuous delivery, continuous deployment, and to really go at the very high surface level here, they're just trying to shorten the cycle between deployment, or between development and deployment, right? So I gave the example earlier where the organizations used to take 6 months to ship something out the door. Now people are at lots of organizations are writing code, they're checking it in, and it's getting shipped out to the website or to whatever, the inside of the factory where people are pressing buttons to make cars on a daily basis rather than every 6 months. And the benefits are like this. Whenever you have a little software bug, I hear they happen here and there, right? When you discover that, right, you sort of want to either fix it or you want to go back. And especially if it's like a critical thing that needs to get fixed now, you want to go back to the last version immediately. Well, it's a lot easier to go back to the last version immediately, or whatever, 2 versions immediately, if you're only getting rid of 3 lines of code or changing 3 lines of code. Tracking that down to what have we been doing for the past 6 months that's causing this one little random problem? A little bit harder to track down. It takes you more than a half a day to fix that, and that's a pretty big problem for a lot of folks, and they would just rather deploy sooner, deploy more often, because of that, and B, mostly because of something in my notes, which is awesome, and I'll re-remember it probably in the next slide. Regressions. Oh, and the feedback, right? It's the same with the open source projects. The sooner they get something out, and they're showing it, whatever, on their website to their customers, and the customers are like, well, wow, why did you move whatever, the t-shirts from over there over here? Now I'm never going to be able to find them. And suddenly everyone notices that t-shirts just stop being sold because nobody knows how to get to them anymore. You can retract that back to, whatever Sue did yesterday and, make sure that gets fixed. Going back 6 months, I mean, that's, like an overhaul. It's going to take you 6 months to undo that, and in the meantime, you're not going to sell shirts for 6 months. That's, depending on who you are, that could be terrible. Like if you're a t-shirt vendor, for example. Really bad stuff. Failing faster, and failure in general. Another sort of shared habit, I guess. We take risks in open source, and honestly, we take risks everywhere in life. It's sort of how you can make big steps ahead, right? Like, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I might change the world. I might be Elon Musk, or I might be the guy who invented the Newton, and nothing ever happened with that, sadly. But it's like whenever we do take risks, sometimes they result in failure. And if we've been taking that risk for a while, and it was a lot of hard work, sometimes admitting that was wrong or bad, that was a bad idea, is sort of hard to accept. Like, I can probably go back to my wee young years with, all sorts of guilt stories with my mother and not telling her about what I failed at, because surely I can make up for it later like that. Okay, I won't do any facial expressions. Anyway, well, that totally threw me off. Anyway, identifying failures early helps you fix them faster, helps you take accountability for them faster, and particularly with open source communities, I think people are really good about taking accountability as a community, because, hopefully along the way you were operating transparently and that everybody was in agreement about what was going on. It wasn't just Matt's fault or Robyn's fault about System D. It was everyone's fault. Just remember that. Everyone's fault. Yeah, it was Jared's fault. It was before my time. But we love Jared, so it's all good. And really, we were all there. Anyway, not to go on the System D path. You take accountability as a community rather than as an individual, and you figure out how to solve the situation so that that never happens again. Because, repeating the same things over and over with people who are dedicating, basically their spare time of their life to something that they care about, dragging them into the mud twice over the same thing, not very cool. DevOps folks have a similar thing. I don't know if anybody's heard anyone talk about blameless postmortems, but it's basically, the situation where something went wrong. For example, the Super Bowl ad that caused 1 billion people to come to their website because they didn't have our fabulous room sponsor, Max CDN, helping out. Whatever, everything crashed, nobody could get to the website. Oh my God, we just wasted all this money. And usually it's far less glamorous than that. Like, most of us will never have to deal with a Super Bowl ad problem in our lives. But the blameless postmortem idea is basically, we're going to get our people together who are involved in this from every point of view, and it's not one single person's fault, because what happens is, sort of like the story with my mother. I don't want to fess up, right, about what my minute contribution to that was. Like, I thought it was a bad idea, but I didn't even speak up, right? It's where you get all the dirt out on the floor and everybody sort of accepts it, and you learn from it and you move on, and you don't make anybody feel like crap about it, provided that everyone is learning from it. And it's sort of the retrospective learning thing that is really shared between the open source organizations and the DevOps organizations, along with the calling out failure as early and as soon as she can. In sharing all these practices with you, just trying to help you see that there are lots of things that you may already be doing in your project that you can sort of reapply to a new area of your life or your career or whatever there is. Having a successful community of practice, whether it's like DevOps or open source or your local like rope tying, knot tying, group, it takes work. You really have to have the dedication and care to continuously improve and to, because improving your craft takes more time usually than just doing the craft, right? It's more fun to just knit than to tell other people how to knit and like learn about the finer points of knitting, and to call the knitting needle company and say, I think this would be a lot better for everyone in the world if only this, because you could just be knitting, right? So people who are doing these successful communities of practice stuff, like, they really care and they're helping to change the world. And the interesting thing is it's sort of like a foreign language, right? Like, if you have been deeply involved in open source, and that was the first sort of community that you were ever involved in, you were probably like, oh my God, like, what, this is so weird, like, all these things that people do, and like, what do you mean, like, we have to share, or we have to be transparent, doesn't everybody do that? And you sort of learn, how communities operate a little bit, and you start learning some of these habits. And much like, I learned French, because I live in Arizona. My mom thought that would be the best language for me to learn. So I learned French. I took 7 years of French, and I'm sure that if I went to learn Spanish, it would be a lot easier than it was for me to learn French, because the languages are sort of similar. And so once you're well-versed in one type of community practice, hopping over to the next one means, oh, hey, this is just like that other thing that we did over there. And hey, what about this? Like, have you guys thought about being more transparent? Hey, maybe that's a practice we can share over here. And you can help improve life in multiple places. So, what are you going to do now, right? You're going to go home, be a glorious unicorn? I hear horns are, like, very painful to grow. Awful. So I don't know that you want to go home and be a unicorn. Also, they're very stuffed and plushy. I mean, it might be good if you're going home to Boston, I guess. So what can you do if you're not going to grow a horn in the middle of your forehead, right? Go home and talk to your boss or your coworkers or, you know, anyone who has ears and will, like, pay attention to you, and talk to them about the value of contributing to open source software. Explaining that, you know, how your organization can actually learn more than just about open source software, that it can learn about maybe DevOps at the same time. Oh my gosh, if only Bob, my lovely boss, had let us contribute to open source software or use it. Just even being able to participate or pay attention to an open source community helps, you know, the organizations understand more about the software that they're consuming, more about the software that's coming their way. You know, just having a better feedback loop with basically their suppliers in general is just one minute little thing that, you know, is a plus for you when you suggest that to your boss. Basically, you know, and I say start doing stuff because I know that in a lot of places people can't just start doing stuff, but if you can start doing stuff even very small, like let's have a book club. We're going to read a book. We're going to read Continuous Delivery by Jez Humble, or we're going to read The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim, because who hasn't heard of that, right? And just start talking about these things and start thinking about how they can affect your organization or how you can wheedle your boss into it collectively together. Baby steps, right? I think the most important thing when you're doing this is, like, don't set your bar too high, people. Like, no one can do that except her. This was like the World Series of, I don't know, high jumping or something. She actually, the article or whatever, the Flickr photo had a thing saying, like, the world. She's amazing. I mean, who can do that, right? Anyway, I may sound kind of ranty when I say don't set your bar too high, but, dude, you do not have to be Einstein, okay? You do not have to be Netflix. You don't have to be Etsy. You do not have to use the hardest tools on earth to feel like you're legitimately doing DevOps. You don't have to have the greatest results to even say that you're doing DevOps if you want to come out and say such a thing for some random reason. Nobody really got started in open source by writing an operating system except for one guy, the unicorn, and you can't expect to be growing a horn on your forehead overnight. Like, what really matters is that you feel like your organization is starting to get on that path to continuous improvement, right? Because that's really what it's all about. Like, we're going to keep doing what we're doing, and then we're going to do it better so that we can do better stuff. Little baby steps going in the right direction. That's sort of what leads to greatness. You know, Netflix wasn't born as Netflix. They eventually got there after I did not return a bazillion of the little discs that came in the mail in 2001. You know, they learned, they figured out what was going to work, and they applied that, and now they have, like, a frickin' empire. And I want you guys to be great, right? Like, we should all be great, because that's awesome. DevOps. I'm the most graceful person you guys will see all day, and I believe that's on the speaker survey. Yes. Yeah, DevOps, just like open source, it's not a thing, right? At least in my mind, I know it is to lots of people, but I think of it more as a way, which sounds silly. I used to work at Red Hat. They have this thing, they always say, like, the open source way, because it's really true, right? Like, the way you do it matters just as much, if not more so, than just the code that you're actually producing. But really, if you're doing things that way, whether it is the DevOps way or the open source way or some other way, the how to grow horns out of our heads way, they're habits that you'll keep forever and that you'll be able to take to the next community practice that interests you and help them to get better, and, you know, then marshmallows, kumbaya, all that good stuff. And yeah. So, that's that. And I realize that talking about DevOps at such a high level, if you're not really totally in tune, is sort of like whoosh. So, feel free to ask questions, because I think we got like 25 minutes. Or unless there's like 10 minutes in between. I probably got like, no. Alright, well, whatever. We can talk about other things. We can go start a campfire outside. Exactly. Really? Oh, you guys all said the word bar. That sounds like a great idea. Right before the next session. Jill, hi. Nice tiara.
We actually, last night, we decided it was no longer ninjas in uniforms and horns because those things are really hard. It's now princes and princesses with tiaras, which are much more attainable to start with.
Yeah. So I had a tiara earlier today and it kept falling out of my hair. I don't know, like maybe that's just a thing. If there are things attached to my head, they just fall on the floor. I'm going to grow a horn and then I'm going to glue the tiara to it. That's the route I'm going to go down.
You're iterating on the process.
Yes. I'm going to be a prince-a-corn. A uniprincess? No, that's like that's too close to Unikitty from the Lego movie. Yeah. The corny princess. Okay. Ian, were you like you were sort of like sticking your hand up a little bit.
Might be a little hand moving. I know a lot of open source communities don't necessarily have an ops side of things when they release something, but they're not necessarily running
right.
Directly on it. Do you have any great examples, anybody you've seen you can look at in the open source community, or maybe even in the distribution that are doing things that you think reflect some of the
So I don't know if you're like giving me the leading question to like
I'm not. I really
like I think the folks in OpenStack have done a really good job of that. I've always wanted to see distros do that, and I think some people are moving in that general direction. But, you know, the OpenStack folks had the luxury of starting their project in an age where those tools existed, right? And being able to say from day one, every time you write a piece of code, you have to write a test that goes with it. And if, you know, we're going to run these tests, and it's going to be more and more tests until, you know, it takes 27 days for things to get through the gate. But in the meantime, everything is getting tested. Going back, like, for example, in Fedora and asking everybody who packages stuff who isn't necessarily the upstream maintainer to start writing tests, a lot of them for fire, like, like, you know, I think there are some things that, you know, we, like, did the build pass or not? Like, things like that would be a really good start because, you know, we in Fedora land, we make, like, release candidates, and sometimes they like don't even boot. Like, why is that even a candidate? Why did like that shouldn't have even gotten that far? But that's what it was. And there's like a checklist of stuff like, you know, did everything compile? Do these like 3 programs like actually start up? You know, can you mount and unmount something? That's all stuff that can be automated. Like, we don't need to have humans doing that, but humans do that stuff because nobody's actually written that for us yet. Yeah, they don't have time, right? It's the technical debt problem. No one's done it, and we don't have time to do it, so onwards we go, having the same problems forever, which takes extra time. Okay, yes, go on Canonical. Yep. Yeah, I'm sure if we weren't so busy at Red Hat writing all the software that we'd... Sorry, I'm totally kidding. Mostly. That would be awesome. And then we'll make the $1 billion a year, and Mark, and we'll go into space again. I don't know. I hear Canonical 1 itself is sort of swanky, and then he's got lots of truffle oil on that airplane. Yeah, seriously. I know people who have been on Canonical 1. Yep. Yeah. Right on. OpenStack in production in one place. Wow. I'm totally kidding. Yay! Good job. Jill and I live in the same town together. So, yes. Ha ha ha. Yes. Yep, we did that last night.
Well, how can we create a better rivalry between Red Hat and Ubuntu?
Yes, no, what you need to do is Have Greg DeKonigsberg write some flaming blog posts towards Mark Shuttleworth. Oh, we already went through that. Never mind. No, I think it's not really. It's not all that. It's really not all that bad. Like, yeah, it's fine. Like. Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, right. So OpenStack I think is a decent example. Ian, that wasn't where you meant to go. Oh, you're giving me the. Are you shushing me? You were. Okay. Okay. And then we just heard some examples of lovely operating systems doing it. And I know there are probably many other projects doing it. Oh, I know many of the Apache Foundation software projects do it because they have a lovely infrastructure team run by one of my friends. And they do quite a bit of continuous integration across Hadoopy things with Elephants and Cloud Stack with customers they got, and yeah, all sorts of things going on. So we have Jenkins and other magical things, and I just started learning about it with our guy who works on that stuff last week, which was fascinating. So seeing about some of the crazy things that they do and the website they posted on and how you can go look at it and how you can get the tests and yay, magic. Oh, yes. Hey, Kurt, you're here. Oh, and so is Suyog. They work with me. I'm not the guy. And that's how we do it at Elasticsearch. I just started like 3 months ago, so, you know, I'm still learning about all the things. Yeah, I mean, I expect that a lot of the tools out there that people use to, you know, whether it's like Puppet, Chef, Ansible, Salt, like those kinds of guys, like I have to expect that even Jenkins, I'm sure Jenkins, if Jenkins is not Jenkinsing themselves, like that would make me cry. And so I'm sure that they must be doing that. Then it's Jenkinception. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. I know about some. I don't know about them all. Do you know about any? Not a single one? I'm looking at you, Ian. That was your question. Yeah, I think that's... Yeah. Cool. Other questions? Really? The power of suggestion. Did you just say bar? Well, it's like been open for 20 minutes, and this is basically the oh my god, you're not going to get a seat time. So, because there's a lot of people in this hotel. Holy crap. The Denny's bar is amazing. You guys laugh. There's nobody in it, and it's like a 10-minute walk down the street, and there's a bar and there's a pool table. It's like,
Their food is edible. We were surprised. We ended up there the other day, and
yeah, you know, Denny's and Domino's have improved significantly in the 20 years since I was in college. Like, it's just a different universe. Okay, questions? No? Thank you.